Welcome to the cybersecurity breakout session. Hope everybody had a good, quick break. So just to level set, you are in the cybersecurity breakout session right now. We have two other breakout sessions going simultaneously to this one. A California breakout session that would be beneficial to anybody with employees in California, or tri-state, which is New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. We'll be recording all of them, so if you want to be in two places at the same time and you can't, you can play back all of these breakout sessions at a later date. But this one in particular, we actually added to the agenda after we had finalized it because it was such a requested topic. So this notion of cybersecurity and how HR is really sort of the conduit and the glue to creating a digitally secure work environment. So we looked no further than our own Acrisure Cyber Services team. So Vin and Jessica, who you'll hear from in just a minute, are really the subject matter experts. And we felt like this would be a really compelling and valuable topic to add to the agenda. So for those of you that have stuck around, you'll get another hour of CE credit because we did just get that approved. So look for that when the day concludes. And we've got 40 minutes or so of really good content. So I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to let Vin and Jessica take it from here. So guys, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. And really glad to be here. Many of you might not know that ACS exists. We are actually an end-to-end technology services company within Acrisure, really unique in the insurance space to have that kind of end-to-end, both IT, generally managed IT, as well as cybersecurity services in-house, used to protect Acrisure as well as our customers globally. And so really, really excited to be here. Really, this is meant to be helpful. We're not planning on getting fully into the weeds today or technical. We're not promoting specific products. We're really here not to bore you with scary stats or create a lot of fear. We're really just here to keep things high level and keep it memorable for you all as HR leaders. And our major takeaway really is this, which is, as an HR leader, you are part of your organization's cybersecurity team and incident response team. And as such, you do things like hire and fire and train and manage the people functions. And we want you to know that a strong cybersecurity culture is something that really permeates down and really builds cyber resilience in your business and on your teams. And if you watch any webinar or listen to any cyber expert, they're going to tell you time and time again that the front line of cyber defense in your company or your organization is your people. It's the most common gateway for threat actors to get through. And so really securing that front line and having a cyber-minded approach to running your business it is really critical. And so with that, we will hop on in. Vin, why don't you go ahead and tell the folks what we've got today?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, expanding on a little bit of what Jessica said, right? People don't traditionally think of HR as a cybersecurity function or really a technical function at all. And that is not the case, right? As our organizations have evolved from pen and paper, right? And we've moved to ERP and human capital management systems. We've put our data up for grabs. And so we expect the systems to run 24/7. Securing the systems is a 24/7 concern. And that does start, right, predominantly with culture. HR is the connective tissue for our organization. So they determine and shape the culture of an organization.
All right, so a high level look at our agenda here. We're going to be running through just generally the threat landscape. Why does this matter? What's at stake here? We're going to talk a little bit about payroll and benefits, as well as cybersecurity awareness training. We'll head into insider threat and talk about social engineering and incident response. But first, we want to start off with a little bit of a question for the audience. Curious to know, just so we can get a little bit of a sense of where our audience is on this topic. and acknowledging that, it can actually be a little bit emotional and stressful to think about mitigating risk in this way. There's a lot of responsibility that's the weight of responsibility on our shoulders when it comes to cyber risk can feel really daunting or overwhelming. And so, especially when we care really deeply about our organization or our business. So, knowing where you all are will help us in this way. So our first question for you is popping up on the screen here is how do you feel about cybersecurity? Take a minute and let us know. Is it overwhelming? Do you feel really confident maybe that that your business has this under control? Tell us a little bit about where you are. We'll give that about five more seconds. Lots of folks chiming in. We really appreciate that. So, okay, so a healthy amount of you are feeling like maybe your business is okay in this area. Also, quite a few of you saying that this is really something that's in IT's realm, and so maybe not feeling very responsible for it, which is a really typical response for non-IT folks. So that's where we want to have a little bit of a shift today is really you seeing yourself as part of this overall cyber risk picture. So thanks for involving, for engaging in that poll. We appreciate it.
So here are some of the core challenges for HR specifically. Obviously, based on the poll, right? Most people think, or we're split. A lot of people think that cybersecurity is an IT issue, which predominantly it is. But there are a ton of areas, these four in particular, that bleed over into the human resources role, right? So the first is remote and hybrid workforce challenges. How many organizations had the infrastructure or specifically the policies to support a remote environment prior to the pandemic? And do they still have those policies or have they created those policies? The second is access management and offboarding, right? Hiring and firing employees. A lot of insider threats come from disgruntled employees, right? They might take some data when they leave and provide that to threat actors or provide that on the dark web for money. And then conversely, a lot of organizations don't have the procedures internally where a salesperson might have access to something that an FP&A manager should only have access to. Third is regulatory and legal compliance, which is a bear in and of itself, right? It's overwhelming. The United States, as it stands today, has 75 to 120 cybersecurity specific regulatory frameworks. Do you know which ones your organization has to adhere to? Right, that can be pretty overwhelming. And then lastly, the human element: phishing, smishing, social engineering. Most incidents or breaches start with a human. Right? They either phish a person or call into a help desk, ask to be uploaded in the HR portal. So those are the four challenges or topics we're going to dive into.
And with that, we're actually going to ask you one more question, if you could indulge us. Knowing those 4 pain points that Vin just responded to, which one resonates most with you? Is there a specific pain point that seems to come up in your business time and time again? If you could go ahead and vote on the 4 options there. Wow, and it looks like after just a few seconds, it's looking, oh, okay, now the results are changing, but still a very heavy response to constantly dealing with phishing emails. So this is a very strong majority here. We're looking at over 60% of you are saying that, constantly dealing with phishing emails is really a pain point. I'm seeing a little bit of legal and compliance needs as well as a far second. But that's good for us to keep in mind. Phishing emails are actually going to be a strong topic for us today. So if that's something that is relevant to the daily lives of your business, then hopefully you'll get something out of this today. All right, so we're going to move into the evolving threat landscape. cybersecurity is really an indication of the overall health of a business, and HR being kind of the vortex which all companies function. It's really the glue of everything. And if you think about, all of the functions that HR does, from hiring and firing, there's just there's an incredible amount of highly sensitive and valuable data at stake here. There's just a ton of sensitive PII, banking details as it relates to payroll, benefits and health details. It's not surprising that threat actors actually really specifically target HR leaders. And so this is happening in a lot of different ways. So for example, threat actors will utilize open source information like LinkedIn to learn about a specific person or their team, paying attention to what they're commenting on, what they're talking about, articles that they're liking. And they will use that kind of information to impersonate emails or try to reach out to that person in hopes of gaining access to some valuable information. In fact, 90% of malicious breaches are a result of social engineering. And social engineering is what we're referring to when we refer to somebody who is impersonating or trying to trick someone into getting information. So phishing emails, spam, any kind of impersonation is what we're talking about here. The average organization is actually targeted by over 700 social engineering attacks annually. So when you break that down, you're mitigating, over almost 3 attempts per day. And as we, as all of these functions of benefits and payroll and hiring, we're just continually relying more and more on third-party vendors. Things are getting much more digitized and automated, and for good reason, right? These things make, relying on third-party software and automation makes our jobs a lot easier. It makes our jobs more scalable. And ultimately it makes us more effective. It does also increase our attack surface. And so, that's why we're wanting HR folks to realize, just what's at stake here, and why this is so important. In fact, Vin and I earlier this week were just on a call with a private school in Florida, who was complaining about the fact of course, during an open benefit window, open enrollment window for benefits, inserted a fake QR code that was sent on behalf of an HR leader out to the team. So you can imagine, employees are expecting to get information about a benefit window. If it's coming from what looks like a known source, they might just, put their phone up to it and click a QR code. And so it's attacks like this that we're seeing day in and day out. Really fun stat for you, Vin, if you could close your ears here. Men are actually 225% more likely to fall for a phishing attack than a woman. And so, take that for what it's worth. That comes from a highly reputable cybersecurity company that focuses on cyber awareness training. They ran that study and found that to be true. So, we'll talk about kind of what to do about that in a little bit, but wanted to throw that fun stat out there.
I believe it. That makes a lot of sense. All right, so jumping into compliance, and I guess a little bit of bad news first, right? As I said earlier, there's a lot of federal regulations as it relates to cybersecurity and specifically data handling. And then on top of global regulations as well. State by state, there's around 15 states that have specific cybersecurity data handling frameworks and regulations that they want you to adhere to. So it really can feel highly fragmented, like patchwork, like it's an overwhelming amount of regulatory bodies coming after you, frameworks that you need to adhere to, and it can feel like you're frankly boiling the ocean. Similar stat, 50% of small to mid-sized businesses as it stands today are not managing compliance at all. I mean, how many organizations on the call have a governance, risk, and compliance officer, right? As you get out of the Fortune 1000 and enterprise space, it's fewer and farther between. The good news, flipping the script a little bit, is a lot of these frameworks are what I would classify as like Frankensteins of one another. So what you can do specifically, right, is determine based on your industry, your state, and where you do business, what state and federal requirements you would have to adhere to, and then have a baseline that you work out of, right? So one that we recommend to a lot of clients is NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's essentially like the governing body in the United States for cybersecurity and technology. They are really the baseline to all the adjacent frameworks and regulatory compliances out there. So NIST is a really good one to baseline off of, and then you can work into CCPA or the New York Shield Act, things like that.
All right. So considering downtime, ask yourselves for a second what it would cost you to be down for a week if payroll and benefits were disrupted, or if the network in its entirety was down for a week. It's really just absolutely crazy to consider all the various losses that can come out of a business interruption from a cyber attack. Revenue, sales, productivity, data, customer or vendor disappointment, employee disappointment. There's just a million things that can be sort of the collateral damage of a cyber attack. And so it's daunting when you consider that the average downtime from a cyber attack is actually not a week, it's 21 days. That is average. So what would it be like to not have any sales in your company or any customers for 21 days? This is really, for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses out there, this can be make it or break it. Equally as risky as a flood or a fire in a lot of situations. And so it's just really critical that obviously employees get paid, and it's critical that they be able to access benefits, as you all know. And so it's dire to think about how wrong things can potentially go. Lots of common business business impacts here: delayed or missed payroll, benefits processing interruptions. There's just so many different kinds of attack vectors here. We've seen payroll diversion fraud, where hackers are compromising HR or finance email accounts to reroute direct deposits. We're seeing 1099 contractor exploits, where an attacker can hijack emails and trick payroll into sending payments or impersonate employees for confirmation. Creating urgency to bypass security controls, or demanding 1099 payments. We've seen that. And then we've actually seen benefits portal breaches as well, where retirement plan hijacking with, attackers draining 401k accounts. So, and they use stolen credentials to do that. So, just a lot at stake. And actually, with that, we'll go into a real life example.
Yeah, so the Coast Guard had a bad year and a half, 2 years recently. The first of the two breaches happened in April of 2024, and that affected almost 11,000 employees. And what that essentially caused was DHS now issuing a cybersecurity compliance framework that takes effect in July of 2025 this year. Unfortunately, that didn't help them for the breach that they just suffered. That impacted around 1,100 service members getting paid. But these are the sort of things that Jess was talking about, like the example of the open enrollment QR code smishing incident that we spoke to a client about. Employee-centric data breaches reached an all-time high in 2023. In the UK alone, it was 3,200 organizations that it was a human capital management system or ERP system that was compromised for employee data. And that's valuable for one of two reasons, right? It can be used as a ransom to the organization, saying, hey, we have all your employee data. If you don't pay us whatever sum we want, we're going to release it into the wild. The other way they can do it is they can just sell it on the dark web. And then all those folks can start opening up lines of credit and start making payment or making purchases with those lines of credit. So there's a couple different ways you can get hit with your employee data being released into the wild.
And then we'll look at an example of more in the public sector. This was a breach that happened just a few months ago, affecting the state of Rhode Island's public health marketplace, of course, happening just before Christmas, right when the benefits enrollment window is open. It's kind of like, it's almost like a threat actor, you know, attacking a large CPA firm the week before taxes are due. It's common that they're opportunists, and so their timing is impeccable. But here you see that over 650,000 people impacted. It was the RI Bridges data breach. So this is, you know, the public Rhode Island system for opting into things like Medicare and health benefits. Really interesting here in terms of the players involved. So Deloitte consulting firm is partially, they're saying partially at fault here, or at least a weak link in the overall dynamic of how the Rhode Island system was protected. But what's particularly interesting, I think, about this example is that the system that was impacted, where the data was stolen from, was from an RI Bridges system that was housed in a data center in Warwick. And that data center was actually noted in the public RFP that had gone out for an IT modernization RFP. And so the RFP had an incredible amount of data about the IT system for Rhode Island. So it showed, you know, basically a map of all the virtual and physical machines, the description of the operating systems. There were numerous network technologies and firewalls listed in the public RFP. And so clearly, you know, the threat group that was implicated here in this example clearly looked at the RFP and used that as data for attacking a specific server and a specific data center. So pretty interesting to consider that when you're putting out an RFP or when you're putting out information like that into the wild, you want to be aware that everyone can read that, including threat actors. And it's just a good reminder to be diligent about the information that you put out there.
All right, so training our employees, creating human firewalls. Essentially what we want to do is educate our employees so that way they know what to look out for, where not to go on the internet, so that way our organization can have a very strong cybersecurity culture. About 2 weeks ago, there was an AI company called DeepSeek, which was all over the news. A lot of folks were using it. If you leverage any large language models like ChatGPT or Perplexity, you probably gave it a spin. But really where that data or where those queries went was a Chinese-backed company, which obviously has some data privacy concerns. How many organizations do you think rerouted a user that would type in DeepSeek to their own approved LLM that they can use? It's probably not many. So really what we want to do is educate our users all the time, right? They're the ones that are going to click on a phishing link. They're the one that are going to open a shady URL in their browser. So we want to make sure that we're conducting regular cybersecurity awareness and training, which is easy to come by and it's really inexpensive. And then testing those users. We can fish our own users now. So you can set up a campaign where, like Jess was picking on men, that they're more likely to click on a phishing link. Well, maybe we can go after a certain subset of users and fish those folks to see if they click into those links. And then from there, we'll put them in even more cybersecurity awareness and training. But really, the number one way for a threat actor to get into an organization is via a human. So if we're protecting those humans through education, we're making sure that our organization is protected from the outside as best it can be.
And then when we're looking at security awareness training, a huge component of that is training around insider threat. Insider threat is a common attack vector where, you know, sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not even intentional. But lots of attacks happening in this way where, you know, someone leaves a company, they're disgruntled, or they might have some sort of personal financial downfall happening, and you know, they're vulnerable to cyber threat actors. And so we want to make sure that we're really thinking about cybersecurity when we're thinking about hiring practices. Obviously, you know, this is common knowledge around background checks and ID verification. But something that folks don't maybe think quite as much about is access control implementation, really just, you know, applying the principle of least privilege, granting employees only access that's necessary for them to do their job. And also just generally, you know, collaborating with IT. You know, how are computers disseminated? How are they collected when someone leaves the company? These are things that I think HR and IT really need to be in lockstep with, so that we can make sure that we're limiting our exposure to insider threat. Vin was just talking about cybersecurity awareness training. We have a great partner for cybersecurity awareness training called Wiser. They have actually they have a great little 2-minute video on insider threat that we thought that we would share with you all, because it does such a great job explaining what that risk is and how to watch out for it. So we're gonna tee up this video, and it's about 2 minutes long, if you can bear with us for it.
When you imagine an insider threat, you probably picture a double agent from a spy movie or a crooked employee sneaking around the office after hours with a paper shredder. While those do exist, most insider threats are caused by average people for common reasons. The most common insider threats are unintentional. For the sake of convenience, employees or business partners may work around security measures and use their personal online storage and tools for faster workflow. This leaves company information vulnerable to attackers. Some insider threats are for financial reasons. Whether they owe money or don't feel they're earning enough, employees may exploit their insider position for monetary gain. An example of this is the lawsuit filed by Google's Waymo self-driving car company after Anthony Lewandowski brought trade secrets with him to Uber when he left Waymo. In other cases, the cause is emotional. This usually involves events in the workplace, such as poor performance reviews, not receiving a promotion, or getting fired. Lastly, some insider threats are political in nature. This may be motivated by national pride or political agenda, such as Edward Snowden, the infamous government employee who leaked sensitive U.S. files to the public. Insider threats show us how critical it is to monitor out-of-policy behavior and educate employees in cybersecurity.
Awesome. And let's look at a real story of insider threat, Vin.
This was actually a cybersecurity specific company. So Proofpoint has been one of the largest email security players in the industry for the past, let's call it 15 years. And there was a new startup, Abnormal, which is really cool, different type of email security technology, but they hired away a senior executive from Proofpoint. When that executive was leaving, he took battle cards on how to sell the product, how to approach the market, how to compete versus Proofpoint at their own game. So he really, really brought a lot of competitive intelligence that obviously wasn't correct for him to do and completely unethical. But now, when you fast forward, Abnormal is taking a significant amount of market share. They have a $5 billion valuation and plan to go public pretty soon. And Proofpoint just got acquired to go back to a private organization. Abnormal is dominating in this space. And it ties back to insider threats, right? How many organizations have salespeople that potentially would turn over and leave and take clients to another organization? Well, how do they have all that client information? Did they just export it right out of your CRM? So insider threats are a serious, serious concern. And it goes back to hiring and firing. How are you offboarding people? What data do they have access to? can we term their access before they actually resign or leave the organization?
Absolutely. And adding on to that, Ben, I just want to emphasize that insider risk is really a growing problem. Since the pandemic, especially, 40% of employees are planning to switch jobs. There's a lot of turnover. And so, when people leave jobs, they do take data with them. And it's really, important to note that risk. 32% of employees who take data from one job to the next are actually repeat offenders. So, a lot of people might not even realize that what they're doing, they might not be maliciously doing it, but it is happening. And there's a lot at stake when it does happen. Employees can easily store, hundreds of gigabytes of data, just right onto their mobile device. And so, or send company documents to their Gmail, for example. So these are things that, tools and people can be monitoring. So with that, just want to revisit the social engineering. And really the key takeaway here is trust but verify. And so, these the social engineering attacks, we're living in an age of AI where, AI is great for a lot of productivity purposes, but threat actors are using it as well. And so the attacks are coming at a scale we've never really quite seen before, and really at a level of complexity. I mean, it used to be pretty easy to spot a phishing email because of typos and perhaps language barriers. But now with AI, they can capture one's voice with just a few seconds of someone's voice. So someone could potentially listen to our webinar today and use my voice and spoof it. It's happening right and left. And you just want to make sure that, that you're trusting, but you're verifying. You're always calling and making sure that the person is who they say they are. And then really, the last thing that we want to leave you with today is just the importance of incident response planning. Then we'll do that.
Unfortunately, based on the line of work that we're in, we get a lot of frantic phone calls from CEOs, CFOs, COOs, HR officers, where they go into work, employees go into work on a Monday, Tuesday at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and they go to log into their business applications, and their machines and files are encrypted, and they don't know what to do. Frankly, that's a really scary scenario to be in. Like, who do you call in that situation? And that prompts us with incident response. So incident response is just getting a plan in place, so that way when that disaster does strike, we know what to do. We know what levers to pull. We know who we need to call. We know where we need to go. So that way we can respond pretty quickly and get our people back to working. So there's a lot of ways to go about it. Unfortunately, half of businesses in the United States do not have an incident response plan, let alone the percentage that actually practices it. There's a lot of free resources on the internet. I referenced NIST earlier. The National Institute of Standards and Technology has free incident response planning. You can download that and populate it based on your organization's specific criteria. SANS is another good resource. Carnegie Mellon is another really good resource. But then at the end of the day, they're just giving you the tools. You have to populate them and go through the process of, hey, in the event that we are in a ransom situation, what do we do? Do we have a cyber insurance policy? Do we have a cybersecurity provider? So those are things that can help you on the incident response journey.
Yeah, really lots of ways that HR plays a key role here in the incident response planning. Everything from, how are employees talking about an incident should it occur? Can HR help tamp down any sort of panic or, emotions around a cyber attack? We train our kids, and anyone with kids in K through 12 knows that, we practice fire drills, we practice lockdown drills. It's absolutely important that we also practice cybersecurity drills. And that is what incident response planning is. If you want to reach out to us, we're happy to provide you with a template or support for doing that. Even the best incident response plan is just one that's practiced. So don't let perfect be the enemy of the good here. You just want to make sure that everyone on your team knows what their role is in a cyber attack. Vin mentioned, do you have cyber insurance? If you're locked out of your email system, like, do you have your broker's phone number written down somewhere? You have to plan for the fact that you might be completely locked out of your network. And so what data, where is data backed up? Where can you access it? What can be accessed immediately in dealing with an emergency like that? This is a true fact. Companies with no formal incident response plan pay 58% more per breach compared to those with a structured, tested response protocol. So when you're thinking about the size and severity of an attack, it's dramatically reduced if you have an incident response plan. So we can't pound on this enough. And take a second after this and consider honestly, do you and your teammates know their role in the event of a breach? And if not, reach out. We can help, or start that planning process.
This is an analogy we use pretty frequently when we're talking to folks, right? You don't need to be faster than the lion, but you just need to be faster than the other guy. If you want to have, or if you have any questions, concerns, want any clarification on IT, cybersecurity, cyber insurance, compliance frameworks, we're obviously a resource for you. Please feel free to reach out to that email attached, or to Jess or myself on LinkedIn. We're happy to help. Hopefully this was really beneficial to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, and in the effort to get some immediate gratification here, I'm going to ask you to do one more poll. I know that Brad and his team are going to be doing polls after this session, but we are just curious. Was this helpful or not? Let us know. So we're going to put our last poll up here, and we appreciate you engaging with us in that way. Take just a few more seconds. And we also, I believe we do have maybe time for some Q&A as well. I didn't see any questions pop up, but I could be wrong about that. So make sure if you have a question, we're happy to be kept on our toes. And it's looking like the results of this poll are great. You feel more confident knowing your role as it relates to cyber. So we appreciate that. Hopefully this was helpful. And yeah.
Hey guys, great job. Thank you so much. We do have a few minutes for questions. Would that be all right? Can I throw a couple at you?
Sure.
Awesome. So yeah, just thank you to all of you that were listening, sharing some of your experiences with cybersecurity and issues you've had in your organization. This is clearly something that's very real, impacting all of your organizations. And there were some stories that were shared. I know you couldn't see them, Jessica and Vin, but I'll pass them on just with real life experiences. So this is super relevant, and thank you again for the content today. So I think one of the questions was kind of thinking of cybersecurity, and not that it's a turf war, but any recommendations on how HR can really partner with IT so that toes don't get stepped on. Everybody kind of knows their place, but they're all contributing equally to the security of their organization.
I'm happy to take a first stab at that, Vin, if you want to follow up. I mean, I really think that HR can just approach IT with questions relating to the content that we presented today. So asking the IT department, what are best practices for granting new employees computers, and what kind of access to the network should they have? And just for them to make sure that IT has a great answer for that, or a policy for that. Do we, asking the IT department, do we have an incident response plan? I'm happy to help collaborate on that. It's really, I think, just a series of asking questions to sort of audit the IT department, not audit in an obnoxious way, but just to just make sure that bases are covered, so that, you know, in an informational gathering way, just so that everyone's aligned and on the same page. I think the more questions that we probe will get us to a further place on our cyber resilience.
So almost like approach it from a place of curiosity
Absolutely.
more than, yeah, that makes sense.
And there are a lot of areas where you know, not stepping on toes, but it's going to bleed over. Case in point was one we talked about a lot, which was onboarding, offboarding, right? So IT is going to be the folks that execute on, hey, let's term that person's access. Let's revoke their laptop. Let's do all those things. HR's job is to identify the high risk employees, right? So, hey, we're about to go through a RIF, or we're going to part ways with this person. We just want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row, and they won't have access to anything that we don't want them to have access to at this point. So there's a lot of, let's call it, collaboration that's going to happen. That is one of the bigger examples, right? And then the compliance stuff, that is going to be in HR and IT in tandem tackling those things, because HR is going to probably own that compliance vertical unless they have a GRC officer. And so they're going to really relay what the regulatory frameworks are to IT. IT is going to confirm, yes, we do this. Yes, we do this. No, we don't do that. And then they have to figure out a path forward. So those are just two examples that come to mind.
Yeah, that's perfect. So thinking a little bit more about just training materials, templates, there were some questions just on, like, for example, the video that played. There was a request, you know, is that something that could be provided afterwards and used for training? So what would be the best way for the attendees to follow up with both of you to get more access to training materials or collateral or templates? Is it just an email to cyberservices@acrisure.com?
Yeah, that's really the fastest way. That's an inbox that I actually personally moderate. And so you can reach out to me directly there, cyberservices@acrisure.com. Happy to send along, you know, that specific video or talk about that security awareness offering that we have in general. Vin mentioned this at the beginning, but like the thing to keep in mind here, I think too, is a lot of these things, specifically training, they're not pocket busters. Like you can train your team at a very affordable cost. We're talking a few dollars per person per year. So it's a low cost way to make sure that, you know, your first line of defense is fortified. So something like a Wiser offering, which is Wiser is our partner. You know, it's a game changer in terms of cyber readiness.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Jessica and Vin, for the information. It was clearly well received. And to those of you that stayed on the line, thank you for extending your time with HRLCS through the breakout session today. I think we'll go ahead and start to wrap things up. So again, stay in contact with our cyber services team. They are here as an extension of our team. We're happy to connect you, or you can reach out to them directly. Think of them as an extension of your team. So use them liberally, use them often. They're great resources. So we'll let you guys get on with your day. So thanks again for the content.
Appreciate it, everybody.
Much.